Boom. Hey, we appreciate every last beautiful one of y'all tuning in, into the Alphabet Chronicles with your host, Dr. Al, and myself, Seneca. Today, we are talking about leadership versus a leash mentality. You know, we were having some conversations before we went to record about the inability to get certain things accomplished that should be done simply because people got leash mentality. You know, they look at my handsomeness, my effervescentness, thing, and it may cause them to be caught like a deer in the headlights. And in that, things don't get accomplished. Been that way since I was born. So I get it. So we attribute that, and we've attributed that in our conversations to a more leashed mentality as opposed to a leadership mentality that will be able to see through the beauty that is me and see God, see the same creator that created me, that created them, and be like, you know what? Let's get active. So I'm gonna lead off with the question: what is a leash mentality, my brother?
It's a great question, my brother. First of all, let me say you are a handsome dude, so I don't know anybody who wouldn't be able to see through that. You know what I mean? But I think that a leash mentality is a mentality of one that is influenced by behaviors that are consistent with beliefs that opportunities are limited. I think taking risks for many people with a leashed mentality are too dangerous. I think that any success is typically seen as being temporary in many situations with a leash mentality. And I think that sometimes remaining in the background, not taking a leadership role, not stepping forward, being in the back of the pack is considered to be the safest in many times. I think a lot of people with a leashed mentality take safe risks. They want to stay in a situation that seems safe, that seems comfortable. They don't necessarily put themselves out there. They don't necessarily, want to be in the forefront. You know, we talk about leash.
You know what? Safe from what? That's I agree with you.
Well, I mean, leaders are
in
the forefront. Leaders are in the forefront. If you don't have a leadership mentality, it's safer in the back. If somebody's out front, they'll take the hit first. If I'm in the back seat or I'm walking behind you down the street and we're in the hood or we're, anywhere at the White House and something kicks off and you're in the front, you're going to take the brunt of what's going on. So it's safer for me to stay in the back, regardless of what that situation may be. It could be a new business opportunity. It could be at work. It could be at play. It could be on a football team. If you're on a football team, it could be on the golf course. It could be in many different situations. A lot of folks are just more comfortable letting someone else lead and they just follow the leader, which can be okay. But
that's following, but we're talking about leashed leadership. So you saying that some people with the leashed leadership mentality feel like it's safer to them to put others out or for them to lead from the rear so that like they won't get disconnected from the leash?
No, most people with a leashed mentality are not leaders per se in most situations. So I'm not saying it's safer to be in the back and lead. They're more comfortable following.
Okay.
They're more comfortable following, or they don't want to be perceived by someone at the top of where they're trying to go as someone who could not be in someone who's a risk or threatening to them in some situations. It really depends on the situation. But I got a new puppy and he depends on me for everything, so he's on a leash, for lack of a better example. And, he depends on me as his leader to, make sure he's going to be safe where I take him, make sure he eats, make sure that, he's in a comfortable situation and he's comfortable following me. So I think a lot of people with a leash mentality are in that kind of situation. Consumers, we tend to be, when I say we, I mean people in general, tend to be consumers in many situations versus owners and bosses. We tend to, when we have a leash type mentality, wanting directions and needing step-by-step instructions, just really kind of following is more, to me, that's what a leash mentality is. That's my own personal opinion. I know a lot of people who I've been in situations where they just do not want to be out in the forefront. They're so much more comfortable following, but that can trickle over into everyday life. That can trickle over into how you run your family. It's such a big topic that I'm currently talking about. A leashed mentality, a leadership mentality is completely different. So I'm not talking about a leashed leader. I'm talking about a person with a leashed mentality that causes them to be more of a follower, on a leash, not really becoming the full person that they can be as a leader, but just kind of going with the flow in many situations and finding themselves, kind of meeting the status quo.
So is that not weak leadership?
It could be. I guess it would depend on the situation and the scenario. If you're my boss, that would be weak leadership.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have a boss that's a leader, a boss, or a boss, and we're just giving this example. You have a boss that's a leader or a boss that has a leashed mentality. You have a boss that has leadership mentality or leash mentality. Leadership mentality being, I'm gonna take Dr. Al and I'm gonna nurture him. I'm gonna mentor him. I see his strengths, I see his weaknesses. We've conversed about it. We've developed a plan, and I'm going to make sure that so long as he follows my lead, I'm going to make him into a better whatever the case may be. All right. That's leaders. That's a boss. That's a leadership mentality versus a leashed mentality or a leashed leadership mentality being, I see Al, I see his strengths, same thing. I see his strengths, I see his weaknesses. Yeah, but I can't let him take my job. And I need to be able to make sure that he doesn't ruffle the feathers. Like, he has to keep a certain culture. He's dynamic. He could keep with, if he gets what I give him, he could overtake me. He could overtake maybe even the president. And then I can get blamed for that. Because now Al thinks he somehow should be the top of the totem pole, but we need him. So we got to make sure that we do things to keep him in a position that is more like status quo, or even, what do they call that? Company man. You ever heard that term before?
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, so, and I'm kind of, because again, I'm looking at it from that perspective as opposed to followers is just that. Now, don't get me wrong. And again, we talked about this last episode. In the Marine Corps, we learned that the best leaders the greatest leaders are the best followers. The greatest leaders are the best followers.
I think that,
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Go ahead. I think that a lot of what you just spoke to has to do with individuals' insecurities. So I'm concerned about you getting ahead. I'm concerned about you, status quo, as you mentioned, not wanting to ruffle feathers. I think a lot of that may come with people with insecurities. Some of those folks may be interested in getting to the top, but I'm just going to keep you from getting to the top. So I believe that can be part of a leash mentality, but I think we're looking at it a little different. I look at a leash mentality as being more of I don't want to say follower, but I want to say more as, I think they both have to do with insecurities, coming from maybe different places, but I see it as being not able to truly step into your full potential as a leader due to some of those insecurities, due to some of the, some of the trauma you've experienced, due to some of the things but I think it's a little bit of all of that. I think you're dealing with a lot of different types of individuals. But when I think of Leashed, I think of someone who could potentially be a leader, but someone who is, for one reason or another, stuck in a leashed mentality, stuck in a situation where the status quo is okay.
Do we define leashed mentality?
I think a leashed mentality is one that influences behaviors consistent with beliefs and opportunities that are limited. I believe that they're consistent with the belief that opportunities are limited.
Right.
I think taking risks for people in that situation is too dangerous. Right. If I step out here, if I put myself out there, then, it may not work, or, I may ruffle feathers. I may not be, that employee that, we had briefly touched on earlier, and not feeling confident that success can build upon success, but it's more of a temporary situation. And, kind of staying in the back of the pack is, the safest. Let me give you an example of that. Leashed versus leadership. When I was in undergrad, I remember I was in a class. I was getting ready to graduate, and I had a professor call me after class and said, Mr. Quarles, can I talk to you? And I'm like, sure. He said, it was a short white man who was a nice guy. He turned my life around. He said to me, Mr. Quarles, he said, when you come to class late, if you come to class late, I notice. If you sit in the back of the class, I notice. If you don't come to my office hours, I notice. Everything you do as a big black man, I notice. He said, so I suggest if you want to graduate, you want to graduate. I said, if I don't graduate, my mom's going to kill me. I've been up here too long. He said, well, I suggest you sit in the front of the class. I suggest you ask questions in class. I suggest you come to office hours. So my leash mentality was I sat in the back of the class. I didn't start any problems. I wasn't a problem student. I came to class 99% of the time, but I didn't go to his office hours. I did what I saw other people do and I was comfortable doing. I wasn't comfortable putting myself out there and, being that leader, being that outspoken person, being that one. I don't know why I did that, but that was part of the mentality I came with, my issues, my story, my experiences. That changed me. I started sitting in front of the class. I started laughing at jokes that weren't funny. I started going to office hours. I started doing everything. He even said to me, he said, you see these kids up front that are doing good? He was talking about the white students. I said, yes. He said, you may want to start doing what they're doing. So that's what I started doing. And all of my grades across the board, my C's became B's because what happened was I was no longer the big black kid in the class. I became Al. So my leash mentality, I became a leader. So it wasn't a class I took from then until I got my doctorate degree that I wasn't in the front, that didn't laugh at jokes that weren't funny, that didn't raise my hand, that didn't go to office hours or email the professor. And I've helped so many other people to become successful just by changing my mentality.
Right.
So a leash mentality, and people carry that over in the work, they carry that over in the home. And I've always thought that, through leadership, that mindset involves having, certain attitudes, beliefs, and expectations that create the foundation for who we are and how we lead others and how we interact and influence the world around us just by how we perceive life, how we take personal control and ownership, not sitting in the back of the class and letting things kind of happen. Now, because what happened in that class is, and then I'm gonna be quiet because I go on tangents.
No, you are literally, because go ahead. I don't want to cut that off. Go ahead, because you're on it.
When he was grading my papers, he was grading Al's papers.
Right.
that okay, well, yeah, Al, you know what I mean? B versus, C.
Right.
Or, you know what I mean? Like I went from there, I'm telling you, I went from there to master's degree, and my study habits haven't changed. You know, how I handle things, my intelligence hasn't changed.
Right.
What changed is how I perceive, what a good student is, how to be a leader as a student is. You know what I mean? I'd raise my hands, I'd ask questions, I'd do everything that, I would do. And we had talked about this before. My dad's thing was lead, follow, or get out of the way. That was his bumper sticker.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think part of being a good leader is really having, what am I trying to say here? Confidence and humility. So you need to be confident and humble enough I'm strong enough to lead, but I'm willing to follow. And if I can't do either one, don't cause any problems. Don't, just get out the way. You know what I mean?
So
lead, follow.
No,
yes.
Just that thought. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, because I feel like you may have answered it, yet you answered it super rote. I don't know, but just to make sure that I clarify. What is the answer to that leashed mentality?
I think to be a leader, and I think a leader has vision. I think a leader has empathy. You have to really kind of understand and feel what's going on. I think authenticity, courage, accountability. You got to be willing to be willing to be a student. You have to be willing to follow, right. And especially someone who has the potential to teach you something. You've taught me a lot. Just in our conversations over the last year, I've learned a tremendous amount from you. I really have, about everything from golf course development to, how to, just all kind of stuff. Right. And I appreciate that. But, some people can't appreciate that. You know what I mean? I think that's part of a leashed mentality, because we're different. You know what I mean? You call me Dr. Al, and, I know you got a bunch of degrees, but it's not, you know what I mean? People may say, well, and, you got a bunch of alphabet behind your name. I know a bunch of people with doctorate degrees and aren't the sharpest people in the world. Right. And, and I'm one of them. I'm really good at what I do, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm willing to follow you. And I think we can go a long way together, because I think I have a leadership mentality, and, game recognizes game. Right.
Absolutely. I think, well, I don't want to say I think. I know that you really hit the nail on the head with this one, for sure. I know that the leashed mentality is a detriment to any people, especially a people in a society, in a culture, in a day and age where we absolutely unequivocally have the intellectual and physical capabilities to rid a lot of things that hinder our evolution. It's the leash mentality that will not allow us to evolve to the people that we need to be in order to foster in the next generations. We've been developing ourselves and this world at a rapid pace, especially the past 250 years or so. And so we have to get to a point where, if we're going to move forward, we have to be able to propel each other forward. And absolutely. I believe that you definitely spoke to that in this conversation, for sure. Talk to me real quick about, what do you believe are some of the components that attribute to strong leadership?
I think you have to be willing to face challenges and take calculated risks. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, not willy-nilly, just kind of let me put myself out there. But, you have to have a plan. Where there is no vision, the people perish. That's biblical.
Right.
That's, Proverbs 29:18. But, I believe that there's a lot of truth in that. You have to have vision. Man, woman, you have to have vision. You have to take calculated risk. You have to see an end result. You have to be looking towards getting to an end result. You have to know where you're trying to go at all times. That's part of vision. I'm a big picture guy. I'm not really a detail guy, but I have visions, and I have people who help me, my wife, friends, partners, yourself, are helping me to get where my vision has me going. But you have to do that. You have to have a plan. You have to work your plan. You have to be, like I said, humility. You have to be humble. To be a good leader, people have to be willing to follow you.
Right.
You can't be cocky and be a good leader. There are people who are leaders who are cocky, and they may be successful in the field that they get to, but in my humble personal opinion, that's not a leadership mentality to me. A leadership mentality to me is being willing to pull people along. We talked about the crab in the barrel mentality last time.
Right.
A good leader is reaching back and pulling up. If I have knowledge, so one thing I do with my business, BuckaFogey Sports, is in the last week and a half, I've talked to 2 businesses who plan on going to the PGA Expo, where I went. Nobody was able to school me before I went to the PGA show on all the intricacy details, how to best prepare. I had 2 sessions with 2 people that I'm helping mentor, for lack of a better term, on what they need to do to be the best self that they can be at that show. Most of the people who I work with, we try to do that for each other. We try to give each other advice, and but there are folks with a leashed mentality who there are people with leashed mentalities who are leaders, and once they're in that situation, they're not reaching back. I think I've arrived, so I can't. If, as you had mentioned early on, if I help you get to where you need to be, that may affect me, or that may, so therefore I'm not going to help you because it may hinder me, versus if I win, you win. Right. That's a leadership mentality. If I win, you win. If I mentor you and you get where you need to go, it would be nothing would make me happier if I help you as a mentor and you get to where you want to go, where your vision and your plan is taking you, and you pull me along with you.
Right.
To me, that's what it's all about.
Right.
We got two chances now versus one.
Right.
So I mentor a lot of doctoral students, and they're always saying, hey, thank you. I think, no, you're going to be leading the world one day. I want a job.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I want a job.
I tell people all the time, man, I say, listen, I appreciate your thanks. It helps me to stay humble. Yeah, you owe me and you owe the world to pay it forward. I think that was have you ever seen that film, Pay It Forward?
No.
Oh man, you gotta look that up. Pay It Forward. I just broke my glass. Pay It Forward is a film. I feel like it came out the millennial. No, it might have been in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. Very, very prolific film about a young boy who goes throughout the world and does some pretty prolific things. Look it up. It's a poignant film. But Paying It Forward.
Pay It Forward.
Yeah, it definitely touched my life in that, because I was active duty in the Corps at the time. And I was like, man, for all the damage that's being done, I got to be able to put myself in a position to do the right thing and pay it forward. So that's huge. I definitely appreciate that type of leadership. You feel like the Eagles had a leashed mentality when they lost to the
man, I think that they did last week, but I think it's time to turn that thing around. I think if they follow the lead of their leader, who I think has a leadership mentality, I think they can turn the corner. I don't think it's too late for them.
How old is that young man? 25?
Who, the coach?
No, oh, you talking about the coach? I thought you were talking about Jalen Hurts.
Oh no, he's a strong leader. I don't think. I don't know. I'm gonna talk about the Eagles right now. You hit a sensitive spot.
Yo, what books can you recommend on leadership, or what podcast, or what just the word papers?
That's a great question. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
You answer that question. You read a lot. You know what I mean? I haven't read as much in the last, year and a half since I've been transitioning as I was at one point. And you've mentioned some very profound stuff for me. So let me kick it back to the leader in this room. What do you recommend people read?
I'm gonna be honest, too much. It's too much stuff. It's really, really too much stuff. But one of my favorite books on leadership, and I'm talking about, is a heart-wrenching story, is the autobiography of Jesse Owens. Just what he endured, his family endured, in the time frame in which he existed. Wow, give me goosebumps. You want to talk about unflinching leadership, unparalleled leadership.
Let me jump in. I think that's a great. I'm on chapter 13 of Dr. Charlie Sifford's Just Let Me Play.
Mine is still hasn't gotten here yet, but I'm waiting.
And I'm on chapter 13 of that. And if we're going to put it into that context, I agree. What that brother endured to get his PGA card, during a Caucasian only period in the PGA of America, the golf, the major golf entity in the country, to be able to be the first African American to get his PGA Tour card was huge, and what he had to endure. His story is incredible. So when you talk about leadership and what he had to go through, I totally agree. I think when we look at some of our heroes and our sheroes and some of the things they had to endure, that is a great way to look at leadership. And he definitely was a leader. And let me say this, Dr. Sifford reached back and pulled up. He gave back to the young up-and-coming players who were coming onto the PGA Tour and mentored them and stayed with them and rode with them in the car and did a lot of things to try to give back. And, Jackie Robinson, he was the Jackie Robinson of golf, encouraged him, and Joe Lewis and many other greats of that time. So that is leadership. And that was, we all we got, let's go ahead and help each other out type mentality. So, I think Jesse Owens, I'm going to read that. I'm writing that down because that's, I'm learning a lot.
Autobiography of Jesse Owens. And since we shouted out two brothers, we definitely got to shout out a sister. Angela Davis's Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Now, I don't care how the world may feel. Everybody don't feel the same way about Angela Davis. Angela Davis is a controversial figure like Nelson Mandela or Haile Selassie. Yet that book, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Freedom is a constant struggle. And to me, and I want us to end on this. I think that's that leadership versus leash mentality. The heart of that is the struggle for freedom, regardless of your social makeup, your religious constructs, things of that nature. Who we are as a species, we want to have a level of freedom that will allow us to evolve. That's what freedom is about. That's what freedom is. Freedom ain't free. Freedom is a constant struggle. So that book by Angela Davis gives some insight into the type of leadership that it takes in order to be a vanguard or part of the vanguard of a free and evolving people. Pick that one up. For sure.
I wrote a poem when I used to do spoken word called Freedom or Freedom. It was
split it. You remember it?
You gonna put me on the spot. It's been a few years. I owe it to you, though. I owe it to you.
You do. You're gonna have to. You owe it to me.
I will. I got you. I promise.
For the next one, you're gonna have to spit them boards, Doc. You know what I mean?
Got you. Got you.
Slow, sometimes rhyme quick. Hey,
give me a mic. I got you.
Appreciate you, man. Much love, respect, man. It was a powerful short time. A lot to meditate on and think about. What we do here with the Alphabet Chronicles. People ask, why is it the Alphabet Chronicles? It's because we go through leadership from Alpha to Omega. We want to talk about as much aspects of what it takes for us to be a brilliant, wonderful, magnificent, never fearing false expectations, appearing real people. So thank you, my brother. We love you, my brother. And we shall absolutely unequivocally speak to you at the next appointed time, all right?
Absolutely. Much love.
All right, man. The Alphabet Chronicles. We out, man.